Mayor Tiffany Henyard's Worst Nightmare. Chapter 1: The Accusation. Mayor Tiffany Henyard was at the height of her political career. The youngest mayor in the history of Crestwood, she had risen to power with a magnetic blend of charisma, intelligence, and an unrelenting drive. She had promised a brighter future for the city, one that left no resident behind. Her tenure had been marked by ambitious projects, including the much-publicized Crownway Revitalization Initiative, a multi-million-dollar effort aimed at transforming Crestwood's struggling infrastructure. To her supporters, she was a trailblazer; to her critics, she was a figure of controversy. Either way, she was undeniable, a force of nature. Her morning had begun like any other, with meetings stacked from dawn till dusk, her assistant rattling off a packed schedule. She thrived on the chaos, wearing her long hours and sleepless nights as a badge of honor. But as she returned to her office after a late lunch, she noticed an ominous envelope on her desk, its hefty weight an immediate warning. The envelope was stamped with the seal of the district court and addressed personally to her. With a growing sense of unease, she slid it open. Inside was a thick stack of legal documents, a lawsuit, filed by whistleblowers from within her administration. The accusations were damning: financial misconduct, abuse of power, and retaliation against employees who had dared to challenge her decisions. She skimmed through the allegations, her heart pounding faster with each paragraph. At the core of the complaint was a series of contracts tied to the Crownway project, deals allegedly orchestrated to funnel money to private contractors in exchange for kickbacks. These were not just faceless contractors either. The name Richard Duval, a significant donor to her campaign and a familiar ally, jumped off the page. Henyard's hands trembled as she dropped the papers onto her desk. This wasn't a misunderstanding, this was a calculated attack. Her thoughts raced. Who was behind this? Could it be her political rivals, or had someone within her trusted circle turned against her? She stood abruptly, pacing her office. "Olivia," she barked, calling for her publicist. "Get in here, now." Olivia Marston appeared moments later, her face already tense. She had heard whispers of trouble brewing, but hadn't anticipated it would escalate this quickly. "What is it?" Olivia asked, stepping cautiously into the room. Henyard tossed the lawsuit onto the desk. "Read it," she said, her voice tight with restrained fury. "And tell me how the hell this happened." Chapter 2: The Media Frenzy. The sun had barely risen the next day when the first headlines hit. By mid-morning, every major news outlet was reporting on the allegations against Mayor Tiffany Henyard. Her name was plastered across screens and printed in bold letters on the front pages. The accusations ranged from embezzlement to unethical retaliation against whistleblowers, each more shocking than the last. Outside Crestwood City Hall, a swarm of journalists had gathered, their cameras and microphones aimed at the building's grand entrance. Protesters had joined them, holding signs that read "Justice for Crestwood" and "Accountability Now." The once proud seat of power now felt like a besieged fortress. Inside, Henyard sat in her office, flanked by Olivia and her chief of staff, Mark Ellison. They watched a live news broadcast in grim silence as pundits dissected every aspect of her administration. Olivia's phone buzzed incessantly with calls and messages, but she ignored them, focusing instead on the growing crisis. "We need to release a statement," Olivia said finally, breaking the tension. "If we stay silent, they'll think we're hiding something." Henyard shook her head. "No. Anything I say right now will only be used against me." Let the lawyers handle this. Mark cleared his throat. Mayor, with all due respect, this isn't just a legal issue. The public wants answers. If we don't give them our version of the story, they'll believe whatever the media feeds them. Henyard glared at him. And what exactly am I supposed to say, Mark? That this is all a misunderstanding? That it's some grand conspiracy? We don't even know the full scope of their evidence yet. The room fell silent again, the weight of the situation pressing down on all of them. Finally, Olivia spoke up. If we're not making a public statement, we need to start gathering allies. People who can vouch for you, who can publicly support you. Henyard nodded slowly. Do it. But keep it quiet. I don't want this turning into a circus. But the circus had already begun. That afternoon, a leaked email surfaced online. The email, allegedly sent by Henyard to a senior official, discussed the Crownway contracts in unsettlingly direct terms. While the authenticity of the email couldn't be immediately verified, its implications were explosive. Social media exploded with reactions, and the protesters outside City Hall grew louder. Inside, Henyard sat in the darkened confines of her office, staring blankly at her computer screen. Her once unshakable confidence was beginning to crack. Chapter 3: The Courtroom. The courtroom was packed to capacity, the air buzzing with anticipation. Reporters filled the back rows, their notebooks and cameras poised to capture every moment of the trial. The gallery was crowded with activists, curious citizens, and a few of Henyard's most steadfast supporters. The atmosphere was electric, every eye fixed on the front of the room where Mayor Tiffany Henyard sat at the defense table. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, Henyard exuded a calm professionalism, but her hands betrayed her, clenched tightly together, the knuckles white. Beside her sat Marcus Lyle, her lead attorney. A seasoned litigator known for his aggressive tactics, Lyle projected confidence, but even he knew the stakes were higher than anything he'd faced before. Across the room, Assistant District Attorney Rachel Cole prepared to present the prosecution's case. Cole was a rising star, her reputation built on taking down corrupt officials. Her sharp eyes scanned the courtroom as she stood to deliver her opening statement. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Cole began, her voice steady and commanding, "this case is about trust. Trust that was broken by someone who swore to serve the people of Crestwood. The evidence will show that Mayor Henyard not only abused her position for personal gain, but also silenced those who tried to expose the truth." The prosecution's case was meticulous. They presented documents, emails, and financial records that painted a damning picture. They called whistleblowers to the stand, employees who testified about the culture of fear and retaliation within Henyard's administration. Each testimony chipped away at her defense, leaving little room for doubt. Lyle fought back with every tool at his disposal, cross-examining witnesses to expose inconsistencies and questioning the motivations of the whistleblowers. He argued that the evidence was circumstantial, that the prosecution was building a narrative based on assumptions rather than facts. But the turning point came when Richard Duval took the stand. Duval, the contractor at the center of the Crownway scandal, was a polarizing figure. As he began his testimony, the courtroom fell silent. Duval's admission was devastating. "Yes, I received preferential treatment from Mayor Henyard's administration. She facilitated contracts for my firm in exchange for campaign contributions." The gallery erupted in whispers. Henyard's face remained stoic, but inside, she was reeling. Duval had been her ally, her confidant. Now, he was her executioner. Chapter 4: The Verdict. The jury deliberated for hours, the tension in the courtroom palpable. Henyard sat at the defense table, staring straight ahead, her thoughts a chaotic swirl. When the jury finally returned, her heart pounded in her chest. On the charges of financial misconduct, we find the defendant guilty. The words echoed in her ears, drowning out everything else. The judge began outlining sentencing procedures, but Henyard barely heard it. Her career, her reputation, her future, everything she had built, was gone. Chapter 5: Redemption or Ruin? Months after the trial, Tiffany Henyard lived in quiet isolation, far from Crestwood. The once powerful mayor was now a private citizen, stripped of her titles and influence. But she wasn't ready to fade into obscurity. She began writing a memoir, detailing her rise and fall with brutal honesty. She reflected on her mistakes, her ambitions, and the system that both elevated and destroyed her. Back in Crestwood, the city grappled with the aftermath of her tenure. The Crownway project was suspended, and the whistleblowers received recognition for their courage. Yet, opinions on Henyard remained divided. Some saw her as a cautionary tale, while others still believed in her vision, arguing that she had been a victim of political machinations. Henyard's story was far from over. Whether she would find redemption or remain a symbol of corruption was a question only time could answer. For now, she was left to confront the consequences of her actions, and the haunting reality of her worst nightmare come true.